Hey everyone, it's Joe Waxman, and I'm back with another video. Today I want to talk about what is the purpose of astrology and what is the right perspective or the orientation towards astrology, at least in the way I see it, right? Other people can see it their own way, but this is how I see it, and I want to share some insights, some understanding that I have about astrology and why it's really useful and why I use it and why I think it's valuable, right? So, I mean, we can talk about, the mundane purposes of astrology, and I don't mean mundane astrology, which is the astrology of worldly events, social events, things happening around the world. I mean, there's that part of it, but for personal use, we can talk about how it describes the personality of a person, and this is good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of a superficial, that might be a more egotistical use of astrology, just describing the personality, very basic sun sign astrology, basic stuff like that, sun, moon, ascendant, things like that. We can use it for predictions, predicting what might happen, in the following year, the following 10 years, or a certain time frame, whatever that it might be, of a person. And if you're really good, you might get it right and be able to predict something about somebody's life, right? How useful that is, I mean, that's probably depends on who you ask. It could just be a novelty, or maybe it might be, somehow useful in helping somebody get on the right track for, what they need to be for, the direction they're heading in, things like that. We could also talk about timing, the timing of events, timing of how to do things, like when to plan on doing this, that, or the other, orrery astrology, or we're just, casting charts. I guess that's orrery astrology is more for like predictive in the sense of, finding things out. What's the word? I'm missing the word. Like I Ching or tarot. Anyway, whatever it's called. The word, I know the word is just slipping my mind right at the moment. I didn't write it down. Where we're using it to predict something about the future, or about the immediate future, or about something hidden and secretive, like finding a missing watch or something, like that. We can look at it to understand our karmas. And here we're getting into like a deeper aspect of astrology, understanding the strengths that we came in with, the sort of karmic credits, if you will, that we've gained through, if you want to say past lives, past life experiences, though non-descriptive. We can't point to exactly what gave us what karmic credit, but we can say, well, this is what it amounted to. You have an exalted moon, in the 5th house or something like that, right? And this is a karmic credit. It's a good thing. And then you have a karmic debit, if you will, a negative karma, because karmas can be positive or negative, or somewhere in between, right? Mixture, debilitated Venus in the 6th house, or the 12th house, or, or anything like that. Debilitated sun in the 8th house, right? Whatever it is, there's going to be some painful things about it. Moon, Saturn, right? Things like that. Pluto, Venus, right? There could be lots of, very difficult placements that cause pain and challenges and hurt. And that's another way, excuse me, use of astrology. Sorry about that. I had something in my throat, had to get some water. So, yeah, I was talking about the karmas. And along those same lines is the psychology. The chart can show the psychology of a person, the way their mind works, their fears, phobias, where they're confident, where they're Inconfident, where they're aggressive, where they're passive, all the different, psychological aspects. It's another way of looking at it. And the use of one of the main uses of astrology, of understanding your astrological chart, is understanding yourself better in so far as the ability to overcome negative beliefs. If you have a negative belief about yourself, it can be incredibly limiting. And that, when I give readings, it's really good to have somebody else tell you in a firm way, no, this is not true. You're not incapable of doing these things that you think you're. Like, somebody's like, oh, I can't do art. I'm just terrible. I can't write, and I'm just like, you need to write. You need to do art. You need to do this, that, the other, because of this, that, and that. And you can be good at it. You just need to overcome these limiting beliefs. I get it. You have fears, you have phobias, you tell yourself you're no good, your Saturn's involved and it's making you doubt yourself, but you have to be persistent. You have to keep overcoming that. That's part of it. And that's really important, because those negative beliefs, we can live our whole life, 80, 90, 100 years, however long we're alive, with a certain belief about ourselves that simply isn't true, right? And how limiting is that? How debilitating is that? When you think something about yourself, oh, I'm bad at this, I'm just really bad at it. And it's not true. You just believe that because of Saturn, and because Saturn, because these placements have a way of projecting themselves out in the world. So when you were young, somebody took on that Saturnian role and said, you're not good at that, and reinforced that conditioning upon you. That's a karma, that's a conditioning that you have to overcome. An astrologer can help you with that, right? So essentially, the main thing about astrology is that it cannot be counter to the direction of life, which is soul growth, right? So because of that, the whole emphasis of life is about soul growth, inevitably. I mean, people can take detours into so-called like egotism, right? Where we're not working on our soul, we're working on our ego, because those are the two options, right? Either we're living for the soul or we're living for the ego. And because of that duality, you can have, two different directions. Like some people can live for the ego, and they're constantly, trying, what they believe in is material wealth and power and control, and at any cost, right? Because often those things are a cost at our own peace of mind. We have to hurt others. We have to walk all over other people, take from others, steal, lie, cheat, and steal. And that's a very egotistical way of life. And we're racking up karma that way. We're racking up negative karma. The other way of living is for the growth of the soul. And that way we have to take the opposite road, in that we cannot hurt people. We cannot abuse people. We cannot lie, cheat, and steal to get our way. We have to be honest and integral and tell the truth and live a life that is good. And that way we evolve, right? We live for the soul. We live for the soul growth. We live for our own maturity, our own evolution. And astrology cannot be counter to this. If we are living for the soul, then our chart has to enable this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you have these astrologers who will look at a placement and say, that's a bad placement. And there's a reason they're saying that. I mean, they're interpreting ancient scriptures, in my opinion, in an incorrect way. There are a lot of times the ancient scriptures, whether we're talking about Vedic or Hellenistic, do have a negative slant on things. But that was their orientation back then. And whether it was accurate or not, we can't just take it at face value, because we don't know the whole cultural tone of the time it was written in. You have to be immersed in a culture in order to really understand how it communicates. There's a whole different mindset when we're talking about things that are written 1,000 years ago, or even hundreds of years ago, in different countries, different cultures, things like that. It's very vastly different than our mindset, our psychology of today, our collective psychology. The way we're all thinking as a culture, because we have a collective sort of tone to our modern society based on the generational planets and the larger cycles. We all have a similar quality, a similar mind about that, and it's very different from the way it was thousands of years ago, let alone in different countries that are foreign to us. So we can't look at ancient scriptures and just take it rigidly. They need really open-minded reinterpretation. So when there's astrologers say that's a bad combination, that's bad, it's just bad, it's not going to help, it's bad, right? That's wrong. That is bad. That's bad astrology. That's an astrologer who does not understand astrology. Because my point is that there's nothing in the charts that can be counter to soul growth. So therefore, there are no bad placements, period. That's a period blanket statement. There are no bad placements, period. And I mean 100%, because the whole purpose of the chart is to show you where your karmas lie. And there can be no negative, there's difficult karmas, of course. We might do bad things in past lives, right? Excuse me. That are going to be represented in our karma, and they show very difficult situations, right? Even if we have to, even if our life is not going to be long, that's not bad, because that's what we need. That's what we need on a soul level. So when we have the right perspective, that this is from the soul, from the perspective of the soul growth, the growth of the soul, the evolution of the soul, that there's nothing bad. There cannot be any bad positions. There cannot be any bad combinations, because each one represents something that we have to, when we're talking about the difficult ones, overcome. And from that perspective, there's nothing that we can't overcome, because it's not about stagnant. It's not about stagnancy, because the soul is growing. The soul is not stagnant. Nothing in life is stagnant. So we have our natal chart. And let's say, like, for example, like really bad, like, Saturn moon, right? That's one of the most difficult ones. Or even Saturn Pluto moon, Saturn moon square Pluto, or something like that. And the debilitated Saturn, right? Something like that. Yeah, it's really difficult, really painful. It's going to produce all sorts of negative results, can maybe even cause some mental illness. But that's our karma. We are paying off karmic debt. And because we're paying off karmic debt, at a certain point, that debt will be paid off, whether it's in this lifetime or the next. We can't say, and it's not going to be, something that's going to be consistent throughout. Some people will be able to pay it off this lifetime, some people won't. Probably depends on a whole lot of things. But regardless, however difficult somebody's life is, they're paying off their karmic debt. And that's not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing. Or the inverse, sometimes people have these incredibly, blessed charts. Well, they're living off the karmic credit from the past lives, but maybe they're still on an immature soul level, and they become extremely egotistical and rack up all this negative karma because they're just living for the ego. They gain a sense of power. They go on one side, they're born into a life of luxury, and then they just, usurp it and just, use that karmic credit to completely go into an egotistical direction in life, and just become, trample all over, those less fortunate than them, and rack up a whole bunch of negative karma. That's far worse than somebody who has a very difficult chart and has a lot of problems and maybe even dies at 40 years old or something with a whole bunch of mental problems. Well, if they did it right, they paid off a whole bunch of karma, and they probably, hopefully, if, in an ideal situation, they didn't rack up extra karma, that's great, you know, like that's a good thing, because they're releasing themselves from the bondage, the karmic bondage that they had entrapped themselves in, and their next life will be much more fruitful one, positively karmically fruitful. So like that, right? So anytime you hear this is a bad placement, that's not a good way, that's not a good perspective, unless they're qualifying it, unless they say, well, what I mean by bad is that it's challenging and it's going to, of course, because it's not, when you say it's bad, it's not taking into the perspective that these are things that we have to overcome. These are our karmas. Then nothing stays the same. And, you know, a lot of times we see the negative karmas through Saturn, but Saturn karmas ease up as we age, right? And they can become positive. Saturn can make things endure and make things last a long time. And depending on the dignity of Saturn and, you know, the aspects, house, sign, all of it. But if it's a difficult Saturn, you might have to work really hard for a while. But inevitably, if you live long enough, you'll overcome that karma, and then Saturn will endure whatever, you know, wherever it is, and whatever house and sign and aspects it's making. It'll elongate and produce and sustain and yeah, it'll give benefit to that area. So you know, it's changeable. It's not static. In other words, our charts are not static. We can work through the difficult aspects. They take work, and they take effort, and they take challenge. So, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, from the big picture, that's how I see astrology. I'm not so interested in the details and the small stuff, and like, I mean, I'll look at that and it's interesting, but it's not really the main thing for me. The way I see astrology, I mean, the real useful purpose of astrology is getting people's head out of the negative side of things, and just, you know, the negative beliefs, the negative paradigms, into something that's much more fruitful and positive and conducive to growth, to soul growth. That is the real essence of astrology for me. And I think, you know, for a lot of people who really get astrology, I mean, it's not just a novelty. That's the last of what it is. Like, I really don't care that much about the novel aspects. You know, it's fun. It's fun hearing about your personality, but if it's not going to give you anything for you to really evolve as a soul, not the ego, the soul, then it's not really that useful, in my opinion. I mean, if it's feeding the ego and it's feeding narcissism, then that's not interesting to me. I'm not really that kind of astrologer. You know, for me, it's all about overcoming the negative beliefs, understanding where your psychology is, where your karmas are, where your negative karmas are, and where you need to apply your energy and your efforts in order to overcome those karmas. And also understanding your strengths and your credits, your karmic credits, so that you can know where you are gifted, where your gifts naturally are, where your hidden strengths are, where your, you know, obvious strengths are, non-hidden, and where you need to, you know, apply yourself more to overcome those negative things. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Don't listen to anyone who says this is bad, because it's just not. It's not. It cannot be counter to life's whole direction, which is towards growth, inevitably. Even if somebody is on a path of egotism, ultimately they can't be on that path forever. It's just not the way of life. Life is actually towards more life. Life is pro-life. Life is about life, and inevitably somebody, you know, every path is going to turn towards the overall direction of life, which is soul growth. That's the inevitable ultimate direction of all life, is soul growth. And therefore, all of astrology is supportive of that, and must be supportive of that. And therefore, there cannot be anything negative in astrology, no negative placements. Okay, it's all positive. That's the bottom line. It's all positive. Okay, so that's the takeaway of this video. There's no bad placement. It's all positive. And it just requires some understanding. And that's how I do astrology. So that's it for now, guys. That's what I wanted to say. That's it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy this content. And go to my website, macroastrology.com, to book a reading. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon.